Tourism provides endless opportunities to learn about the way that other people live. From attending festivals, such as the running of the bulls in Pamplona, to visiting the pyramids of ancient Egypt, to taking a tour of the tea plantations in China, or enjoying the locally brewed ouzo when you're on holiday in Greece. Whether it's intentional or not, you are probably going to experience some form of cultural tourism during your holidays or your travels. Cultural tourism is big business, and it's only getting bigger. But what is it? What's it all about? In today's video, I'm going to teach you exactly that. And if you are new here, my name is Dr. Hayley Stainton, and I teach all things travel and tourism. So what exactly is cultural tourism? Cultural tourism is the act of travellers visiting particular destinations in order to experience or learn about that particular culture. Cultural tourism comes in many different shapes and sizes. We can experience it through attending events and festivals, by visiting museums, or by tasting the local food and drinks. Cultural tourism can be a fundamental part of our trip. For example, if you are going to learn about a culture, to learn a language, if you're a backpacker and you really want an immersive experience, an experiential travel experience. But cultural tourism can also be a byproduct of a holiday, of our travels. For some people, their sole intention of their holiday could be to lie on a beach. But inevitably, by travelling to a destination to lie on that beach, and by eating the food, and by meeting the people who serve them the food, who bring them their drinks, whatever it may be, you are exposing yourself to different cultures and different ways of life. So cultural tourism is such an integral part, whether it be big or small, of the travel and tourism industry. In fact, cultural tourism is often associated with education and educational tourism because we learn so much about different cultures and different ways of life. There are a wide range of cultural tourism activities that tourists can take part in. Staying with a local family in a homestay is a great way for a deep cultural experience. Having a tour around a village or a town can allow you to learn a lot about the local area, especially if that tour is done by a local. Learning about the local employment, for example through a tour of a tea plantation or a factory, can be a fantastic way to really learn about what it's like to live there and work in that area. Volunteer work can be a great way to immerse yourself into the local community and do something good. There are plenty of courses that you can take whilst travelling, such as cooking, art courses, embroidery courses, and this can teach you so much about the local culture and the local way of life. Visiting a museum is also a great way to have a cultural tourism experience, whatever the focus of that museum could be. Likewise, visiting a religious building can be insightful and it can be a very powerful experience. Buildings such as cathedrals, churches and mosques are very interesting to many tourists. And socialising with members of the local community can really be a great way to get to know new people and their ways of life and their culture. Visiting a local market or a shopping area can also be really insightful and a really interesting and fun experience. Trying the local food and the local drinks is another way to experience cultural tourism. Many destinations will put on cultural shows and performances, which is another great way to soak up the culture of the place that you're visiting. And visiting historic monuments is a very popular activity for many tourists. So where are popular destinations that we can travel to for a cultural tourism experience? India. It's impossible not to visit India and experience the culture. Even if you are staying in a 5-star Western all-inclusive hotel in Goa, you will still be tasting Indian curries, you will still be spoken to by Indian workers, and you will still see life outside of the hotel when you transfer to and from the airport. For most people who travel to India though, cultural tourism is far more than peeking outside of the enclave bubble of their all-inclusive hotel. Thousands of international tourists visit the Taj Mahal every year. Many more people visit the various Hindu and Buddhist temples scattered throughout the country, as well as various mosques. Some people visit the famous Varanasi to learn all about reincarnation. Many tourists who visit India will try the local dal, eat the fresh mutton and taste the chai. Thailand. Thailand is another destination that offers a great cultural tourism potential. From the Buddhist temples and monuments and the yoga retreats to homestays and village tours, there are ample cultural tourism opportunities in Thailand. Israel. Israel is extremely popular with religious tourists and those who are taking a religious pilgrimage, as well as leisure tourists. There are many sites that you can visit around Israel, from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, that have lots of culture to offer. And there are plenty of people who are not religious in any way, but they still want to go and see these famous historical sites. New York. New York is a city that's bustling with culture. It is world famous for its museums, and you can learn about anything from World War II to the Twin Towers here. Many people would argue that shopping is ingrained in the culture of those who live in New York, and many tourists will take advantage of the wide selection of products on offer and bargains to be had during their travels to New York. You can also treat yourself to watching a traditional West End show, trying some of the famous New York cheesecake, and enjoying a cocktail in Times Square. Dubai. Dubai might not be the first destination that comes to mind when you think of cultural tourism, but it does in fact have lots to offer. Dubai is a fascinating mix of old and new. One minute you can be exploring the glitz and glamour of the many high-end shopping malls and skyscrapers, and the next minute you can be walking through a traditional Arabian souk, soaking up the culture of the traditional UAE life. As I mentioned before, cultural tourism comes in all different shapes and sizes, and so do cultural tourists. At some point or another, I'm a cultural tourist. You're a cultural tourist. We all are cultural tourists, but the extent to which will differ and vary according to what we're doing on our holidays, on our travels. So in an attempt to understand this, there have been a few academics who have developed typologies of a sort to try to define what type and what extent to which you are a cultural tourist or not. According to Bywater, there are 3 different types of cultural tourists. The first is the culturally interested tourist. This person demonstrates a general interest in culture, and they consume cultural attractions casually as part of their holiday, but they don't necessarily have strict plans to do this. We then have the culturally motivated tourists. These people really want to consume culture. It's a major part of their trip, but they don't necessarily choose their destination on the basis of specific cultural experiences. The people who do this are called culturally inspired tourists, and this is when culture is the absolute aim of their holiday, and their holiday or their travels are planned around this cultural experience. Can you empathise with any of those typologies? Would you describe yourself as any of those? Let me know in the comments. So why is cultural tourism important? Well, cultural tourism is important for many reasons, but perhaps the most prominent one is because of the social value, the positive social impacts that cultural tourism can bring. Cultural tourism can help reinforce identities. It enhances cross-cultural understanding. It helps us to understand each other better. It helps preserve the heritage and the culture of an area. It helps to educate people. There are a lot of social benefits that are associated with cultural tourism, and if you want to learn more about that, I have produced a video all about the social impacts of tourism, so do check that one out. Cultural tourism can also have some fantastic economic benefits. Tourists who visit an area to learn more about a culture, or who visit cultural tourism attractions, such as museums or shows, during their trip, help to contribute to the economy of the area. Attractions need people to work there. That brings with it employment prospects. And there are tertiary businesses that benefit too. Think restaurants, taxi firms, hotels. Furthermore, for those people who seek a deep cultural experience, options such as homestays or Airbnbs can have a real positive economic benefit to the member of the community who hosts the tourist. Personally, I think the best benefit of cultural tourism is the educational benefit. We learn so much. It can broaden our mind, it can broaden our way of thinking and open our eyes to bigger issues in the world than what we experience in our day-to-day lives. Tourism can be such a powerful tool for education, and cultural tourism is the perfect catalyst for this. But cultural tourism isn't always perfect. So what are the negative impacts of cultural tourism? There are many examples throughout the world where local populations have changed because of tourism. Perhaps they have changed the way they speak or the way that they dress. Perhaps they have been introduced to alcohol through the tourism industry, or they have become resentful of rich tourists and turned to crime. Destinations risk standardisation in the process of satisfying tourists' desires for familiar facilities and experiences. In other words, things are becoming the same no matter where we go. While landscape, accommodation, food and drinks, etc. must meet the tourist's desire for the new and the unfamiliar, they must also at the same time not be too strange or too unfamiliar, because few tourists are actually looking for completely new things. The Western world believe that a tourist destination is no longer authentic when their cultural values and traditions begin to change. This is something that can occur as a result of cultural tourism and tourism in general. Furthermore, cultural clashes can occur because tourism involves movement of people to different geographical locations. With different cultures, people can clash. There's likely to be economic inequality between locals and tourists who are spending more money than they usually do at home. This can cause resentment from the hosts towards the tourists, particularly when they see them wearing expensive jewellery or using plush cameras, etc. that they know they can't afford themselves. Further to this, tourists often, out of ignorance or carelessness, fail to respect local customs and moral values. There are many ways that tourists offend the local population, often unintentionally. Did you know that you should never put your back towards a Buddha? You should never show the sole of your feet to a Thai person? You should not show romantic affection in the Middle East. These are all things, culturally, that some people are not aware of or are not respectful of. For me, cultural tourism is exciting, it's educational, and it's so much fun. If you have enjoyed this video, please do me a favour and give me a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment, let me know your favourite cultural tourism destination. And once you're done with that, watch this next.